And we're rolling.
Rock and roll.
Welcome to Right
Fucking.
Now
Yes.
with Karen.
And John.
Oh, thanks, Karen.
Thanks, John.
I am excited to hop into it today. And the big realization I had this week, and I seem to have repeated realizations of the same thing. So we've kind of discussed this a bunch before, but I'd love to dedicate an episode to it, at least as a starting off point. And that is possibility. I kind of realized is all life is, at least as like the idea of a human, is seeing beyond what is, realizing that actually can be an experience, and then ultimately experiencing it. Like everything in life, if you look at human history, you start with like caveman days, and someone like, I don't know, looks at food and is like, I wonder if there's another way to prepare it. And then they like find fire and find grilling it. But maybe with more modern examples that I'm more excited to explore now, from Dr. Joe's new Source movie, just from the trailer of it, the idea of some lady literally having a thyroid surgically removed and then regrowing a thyroid and having all the medical documentation to support that a thyroid was removed and regrown. And then all of a sudden it makes you stop and go, wait a minute, regrowing an organ is a possibility. And then it makes you wonder, I wonder if I could regrow a limb or something like that.
Or make your penis larger.
For par exemple.
Grow hair when you're bald.
Yes, all of the above.
Or have a tooth that has been removed, like regrow, like all the things, right?
Yes.
Love it.
Are you tracking with me on this idea of possibility? I like sat with it and I'm like, wait, that is life. Everyone's always like expanding is the term a lot of people use, but what that expansion is realizing, wait, there's more, something can be different than it is now. And specifically, people have told me it's not possible for this to change. Like you can't regrow organs, or maybe in 1800, like maybe I can make something fly like a bird, and somebody being like, what are you talking about, you fucking idiot? Nothing's ever gonna be able to fly like a bird. A person will never be able to do that, right? Or Ford being like, let's make a horseless carriage. And someone's like, dude, what are you even talking about? But like people conceiving, there's maybe a better way to do this. People saying no, those dedicated individuals like sticking to that vision, and then it literally becoming a hardened fact that everyone just accepts as reality.
I love it so much. And I know I've said this before, but for me, I love to play with this stuff in ways that are inconsequential. And one of my first ways, and I've mentioned this on a previous episode, but maybe you're tuning in for the first time.
Welcome.
Is after a Dr. Joe retreat, a week long, I was in this situation where a guy was going to give us a ride, and his car had been sitting there most of the week, and the battery was dead. And I had just done the body electric walking meditation. And I'm like, we are electrical beings, and surely in the infinite realm of all possibilities, there is a potential for me to jumpstart your car using no cables, but the electricity from my body being transmitted through my palms to your battery without touching it. So I had this idea, and I selected it as a potential.
Yes.
And then it happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And for me, it was so much fun. And it ignited this joy and this playful curiosity. I'm like, well, what else is possible? So the next day, I was having breakfast with this guy who was leaving. And he went to go to his room to get his suitcase, and his key had become demagnetized. So he kept tapping it to the door, red light, red light, red light. I'm like, motioning with my hands like, okay, bring it here. And I like rub my hands together, and I just like focused on creating the connection with that key that it was going to open the door.
Yes.
And there was a knowing inside of me like, okay, it's done, try it. So he tries it, and of course on the first try it opens. He's like, oh my gosh, you're a witch. And I'm like, no, I'm just selecting that potential. And if I had listened to society like, that's not possible, I never would have been open to doing it. But I was at a week long, and why not? At that point, you open up to so many possibilities. You're seeing walking miracles constantly, like people regrowing organs or getting their sight back or whatever it is. So whatever we can conceive of, why not play with it?
That is so cool. I love so many things about what you said. The first thing is the idea of selecting that potential from the quantum. And all these people we're into, Bashar, Dr. Joe, Abraham, they're like, this isn't like voodoo magic. This is simple physics of the structure of existence. Everything exists means literally everything exists. You just call forth with your focus that potential. So possibility is simply realizing you have so much power to call forth these potentials. And it's interesting, what's really fascinating is that idea that your beliefs are cemented through your experiences. So if you believe you really could jumpstart a car, remagnetize a key, reality is going to confirm for you that you do have that capacity. But for people who choose not to believe and say that's stupid, I'm never going to believe in it, they get to experience a reality which cements the fact that that's not possible. But it's simply, as I love Bashar's paradox, the only reason the limitation is possible is because you're actually unlimited. If you weren't unlimited, you couldn't create the possibility of limitation, which is like a total mind-blowing paradox for me, but really like sets the stage. You have to, each individual has to have all the power to pretend like they don't, to even make that a possibility. So I love that.
Yes. I think I'm going to grow taller. That would be fun for me.
Yes. Yes.
We were talking before we got here. Years and years ago, I used to listen to this radio station back in Michigan, and they had a hypnotist, and he was hypnotizing all these women to have their breasts grow larger. And you know, I've always had a large chest and it used to be sore, and I'm like, well, why can't I do the opposite? So I just had this mantra. I'm gonna share it because it's really hilarious. It was small perky boobies. And so I would just like look in the mirror and picture my breasts smaller, like small perky boobies. And over the course of 1 week, they shrunk an entire cup size.
I believe it.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I didn't know anything about meditation or quantum physics. I'm like, well, if I just believed it because, you know, I didn't see it, but they measured them all before and after, and they all grew. I'm like, well, why can't I do the opposite? And I actually released weight that way. In my 20s, it was only like 10 pounds a year, but it was 35 pounds over 3.5 years. And it was just picturing myself the way I wanted to be.
That's awesome.
But I wasn't good at it, so it took a while.
Yeah.
But it still worked.
It's like that continuous practicing of focus.
Yep.
I forget what I was listening to. I was listening to something a little obscure the other day, but it was phenomenal. It was saying, listen, if you don't drive your own focus as you go through reality is going to drive your focus for you. Like if you're not intending to keep your awareness and intending to focus on the outcome you prefer, and you just kind of are like, la la la, you're just going to observe what is in your reality. And then you get in that looping Groundhog Day where you're simply observing, being like, well, that's what it is, cementing that as the only possible experience and re-experiencing it, and it cycles forever. So it really takes that intentionality and that decision to stay aware and stay focused on the possibility rather than just defaulting in. But what's coming to mind when you were talking about losing weight or changing boob size, which is awesome, is Bashar's Bashar's statement of fact on how reality is actually structured is that every now moment is completely independent and not associated with any other now moment. You can make an association in your belief system and therefore kind of carry that idea forward, but his truth that every change is an instantaneous change. So we create this idea of process, like I need to do pull-ups every day for a month to gain bigger muscles. And what you're basically doing is deciding it's only possible to make very tiny changes. So every day you decide I can make the tiniest change. But I love, there was a really great episode he did where he's like, you just need the increments of your change that you allow are simply based in your own beliefs. So you can decide to believe giant leaps of change are possible in every moment and start making bigger leaps. So literally like changing a cup size in a week or maybe a day or truly within 1 second is what might actually be happening within the structure of existence. But through the filter of the mind and belief system, it creates the idea of gradual change.
I'm just thinking like, okay, let's play with it right now.
Yes. Let's
Close up.
How awesome would it be if we could just sit here and all of a sudden you see like my biceps blow out, your boobs do whatever you want them to do, like hair grows.
I make one big, one small.
But speaking of possibility, right? If you can supposedly conceive of it, that means there is a frame in the structure of existence that exists with that occurring.
I love that too. And it is definitely our belief because then our frequency matches that level of belief for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fun.
I had one other thing I was burning to say with what you were talking about before was you were saying when you're in a light and playful mood, And it seems to be that type of mood or perspective or spirit of being light and playful, not insisting on things, is the key to enabling modification of beliefs and modification of your reality. It seems like it just doesn't work when you're in a negative emotion, or maybe it works, but extremely limited and extremely slow as a result of that. So
Yeah, and I was listening to Bashar recently, and he was saying like your insistence on it being a certain way is going to collapse your possibility. He didn't say it exactly like that, but it's going to not get you what you want because you haven't changed. You haven't changed if you're insisting it must be this way.
yes.
And you're limiting the universe and your higher self because they may have something way better in mind for you.
Yes. I was just listening to a Bashar as well, which was really cementing the point home where he's like, when you get an image of something that makes you feel really good, like $1 million or a partner or whatever it is you're seeking, a new job, he always says that is the higher mind presenting you with an image that's symbolic of the emotional state that's your true self, your true aligned self. But it's just a symbol for it. So leveraging it for the emotion and recognizing this emotion represents my true aligned self, but the image I'm seeing is not necessarily what needs to occur. I need to insist that it plays out that way, because as Bashar always says, the best the physical mind can conceive of is the lowest possibility that the higher mind is capable of delivering. So if you're insisting on that lowest thing, sometimes it'll give it to you. Or, I mean, maybe it'd be like the higher self is like, this is just too low. I can't do $1 million check that you're insisting on. 12 million is the lowest I'm able to deliver to you. If you would just hold the feeling of it, then you open the potential for delivery of that.
That's really cool. I haven't heard that that's the lowest that the higher mind can conceive of. That's super cool. Yeah, I was hearing him say that too. Like, you get the image of the thing for the emotion, and then once you get that emotion, you drop the image, because that allows you to release your insistence that it must be a certain way or else I'm not successful or whatever the hell we make it mean.
Yeah. And
Or it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah, just being okay. There was another great one. Ooh, I love that we're deep in this Bashar review, where he's like, many people go through this process. You see the image of $1 million check, you get the emotion, and then you're like, ooh, $1 million check is coming. Like, I insist on this being the outcome of it. And I completely lost my train of thought, but it will come back to me. Oh God, I was so juiced. But what's coming to mind actually is another Abraham, where she's like, do you realize when you go through emotional states, you'll come in at a lower emotional state with like a question or a statement you want to make. And if you watch yourself transition to higher emotional states, frequently what happens is people forget their questions or forget their train of thoughts because it's no longer relevant to the focus that they were previously on. Because as Bashar always says, you simply perceive the frequency that you've chosen yourself to be at, like a TV station. So you may be on one channel and using it as an emotional lever, and it bumps you up to the next channel, and all of a sudden you physically can no longer conceive of what's on the lower channel. Great recovery, John. I love
That
how
was
I did that right
great.
there. But it was so true. I was like seeing it and experiencing it in real time.
And the lower channel is no longer relevant to who you are in this moment, because who you
Yes.
are in this moment is not the same as who you were 5 moments ago or whatever.
That is mastery, Karen.
Thank you.
That's it.
I want to talk about, you were talking about selecting potentials or else kind of leaving it to chance. The other day, I was driving home from a podcast recording, and I was just kind of on autopilot. I didn't set any intentions for my ride. I was picking up my daughter from school, and I got pulled over. And I'm like, okay, all right, time to put my money where my mouth is. I'm like, how is this for me? How, whatever. And my license plate registration expired like in September, however many months ago that was.
A little while.
He's like, do you know your license plate expired in September? I'm like, I do now. So I got a ticket because I didn't say, I didn't set an intention for a smooth ride home. And, so that happened. So that's just one of those things. It's like we get to be intentional everywhere. And I believe it happened for me so that, because it's such a small thing. right?
Yes.
Sometimes we could get into like a life-threatening accident because we don't set an intention before we go for a drive anywhere. So for me, it's like be mindful in every moment, set an intention before I do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, Abraham has that great structure she calls segment intending. Anytime there's a change in segment, which can literally be like any minute, but you're about to start a drive, you're about to play a new song on the drive, you can start making segments as tight and small as you want them to be so you can constantly reframe.
That's what he said.
Boom. There she is. But like, why not, before you're going to do anything, stop and take a minute and envision and feel the emotion of the best case scenario. I was hanging out with some great friends in Atlanta recently, and we were discussing this idea of like worst case scenarios, people frequently spitballing, and we were kind of realizing if you're going to take the time to play out a worst case scenario, totally fine. But since that's a non-solidified potential future, it would only be fair and reasonable to take an equal amount of time to now play out a best case scenario. So be like, all right, we discussed the worst possible way this can go. Now let's take 5 minutes and discuss the best possible way that this can go. And then it puts you in that mood where you realize like, maybe that was kind of stupid to even bring up the worst case scenario. Like, because the possibility is it could go the best case scenario. And if I am continually segment intending, continually practicing, continually choosing that focus instead of what I'm seeing, because as Abraham says, what is means nothing. What is the past as far as they're concerned. And the present moment is actually what you're projecting your focus onto now.
I love that. How many people do that? Like, okay, what's the best possible scenario?
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Woo.
Traveling a lot, in the last few days, I had the opportunity to really practice like seeing through. And I've found this really cool capacity within myself to be half conscious of the scene of reality that's playing out in front of me, and simultaneously half conscious of like literally seeing an occurrence that's different than what I'm observing, but in a very preferred way. And I've had several examples of things play out now where it goes as I preferred to a second or two later. People will be like, nope, that's not possible. And then I'll be like, all right. And then a second later, they'll be like, oh, wait, actually, maybe, or something like that. A bunch of my friends, we busted into this car rental place. One of my buddies who was dropping me off there was like, I gotta pee so bad. And we go in this car rental place, and the three of us walk in, and I see him ask one guy behind the desk, hey bro, I really gotta use your bathroom, can I use it? And the guy's shaking his head no. And for some reason I had a feeling he was gonna do that. So when we started walking in, I like saw my buddy heading into the back to go to the bathroom simultaneously as the guy's shaking his head no. And I did nothing and just stood there for another second or two. Some other guy pops around the corner from the back and without saying anything, waves my buddy in to go back to the bathroom that's kind of in the back and not really like a customer bathroom. And I was like, boom. And I've had a handful of examples like that where like the answer's no, but that's actually what I was gonna say before. Bashar says that's the test. When you have an image of what you prefer, you get confronted with what he calls an echo, reality staying the same, saying, nope, that's not possible. Are you gonna believe that bullshit, or are you gonna keep your focus on what you prefer? And he goes, that's the test. Hearing the negative feedback and being indifferent to it and still continuing and deciding, my focus is where it is. I know it's a possibility. And then he's like, then you've proven to the mirror of reality, I'm ready for change. I'm smiling. I don't care if you're frowning, I'm smiling. And then reality, being a mirror, has no choice but to smile back to you.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I feel
Nailed
good.
it, John.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what a way to play.
Right.
And your buddy really benefited.
He did. And I mean, truly it was inconsequential, so that it was easy to stay in the positive state. I'm like, he'll probably go down to the grocery store or something if he can't. But I was like, let's start playing with this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so much fun.
Yeah. And getting like new seats on planes, just a bunch of things that like seem small, but the more I play with it, the more I prove it to myself. And then you go for bigger and bigger and bigger things, knowing reality is my creation. And
The
everyone
checks
else's.
with all the zeros.
Yes.
Not that there are checks anymore, John. I mean, that's a really outdated vision.
Some people still use checks, Karen.
Who?
Actually, these
Elderly people.
these buddies I was with, I was like, let me Venmo you money. And they're like, oh, we don't do Venmo. And I was like, what? I was like, I'll write you a check, but yeah.
You had a check with you?
I didn't have a check with me. I'm gonna mail it to him. Speaking of other antiquated
Mail?
technology.
What is this?
Hey, everyone's doing their own. Everyone's doing their own. It's all good.
Do you hang out with senior citizens, John?
From time to time.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying, like.
Sometimes there can be fun in limitation, which is interesting. And Bashar always goes back to that. He's like, we find it, he calls us, or the S1E, his species, calls us the masters of limitation. Because he's like, what you're all doing in the game of humanity is intentionally limiting yourself. And I love when he goes, and it's a fine game you've chosen. Because creation is, everything is here and now. There's nowhere to go. There's no limitation of time. What the hell? Let's see how much we can limit ourselves and then crawl our way out, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so true though. I love like the quantum leap by just selecting a new focus and saying this, looking at it like the still frames, like we've talked about before, like there's no separation or no difference between this still frame that I'm living right now and the one that I select. And why does it have to take 10 years to get to that place?
Yes.
If I just select it now.
Yes. I've convinced myself, well, other people have helped me convince myself, if I'm imagining something, what else could imagination actually be other than seeing other frames, the same damn frames that we experience as physical reality with the five senses? Like, what else could it be in the structure of creation?
Yeah, and if we can imagine it, it's meant for us.
Hell yeah.
That's the thing.
Abraham says that, and I love it. She's like, if it's even in your conscious awareness in imagination, it means it's already 99.99% within the realm of your possibility. It's just a little tweak of your vibration to align with it, to call it into the five sense reality experience. But it's true. Like, think of how many things you never conceived of before and never will that other people have. And you realize, shit, it must be true. Like, if I'm able to conceive of it, it must be an available film strip for me. Sometimes you see other people creating stuff, and I'll be like, damn, not in a million years would I have ever like had that thought to even focus on whatever that is. Yeah. And yeah, so we're all like on our own path here, pulling frames.
Pulling frames. Sounds like pulling trains, but you're welcome. I always got to take it in the gutter. Don't
Take it
I,
too
Jen?
far. I love it.
That's what I'm known for.
I usually pride myself on being that guy who takes it too far. Like when people set the line, I'm always like, yep, I'm just gonna hop over it. That's why we get along so well. You're like, I'm gonna dance over it. I'm gonna high jump over it.
I love it.
That's what's
when
up.
I coached in this leadership program, we would say to our coaches, we would much rather pull you back than push you forward. Because you can't teach somebody boldness, but you can say, okay, that was a little bit too far, just pull it back a little bit. And I would rather live in that place of boldness and uncensored communication.
Yeah, totally.
And I do.
And you do.
And people either love me or hate me. There's not a lot of lukewarm responses.
Yes, shine your light. Hey, but then it parses out easy for you. Who's your peeps?
Yes. I got to tell you something that happened this weekend. I went to a party, like a small party with a woman from my yoga studio. And there was like a woman there that I met at the holiday party, and I was talking with her and I was just being myself. And she was laughing so hard. She's like, I thought you were a prude. I'm like, what? She said, I thought you were like so proper. I'm like, how? And then I was thinking back, like I met her at this holiday party. I had a dress on. She was with her husband. So I didn't know them. I'm like, I didn't want to be like super dirty, you know, in front of her husband, because some people could take that the wrong way. Like I'm flirting with her husband, but I was laughing. She's like, wow, you're a lot different than I realized. But I guess because I wear a dress, people have a certain image of me.
Isn't that fascinating?
I guess I have to dress sluttier. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I'd love to tie Bashar in
Yes,
to
please.
the idea that the reality you experience is based on the definitions you assign to things, and you realize it's totally an individual game. We talked about this in another episode. No two people have exactly the same definition for something. So a certain cut of dress for one person, they've chosen consciously or unconsciously a definition for the type of person who wears like that type of dress, and with no additional input, you like default to that definition and therefore that experience. So that's a really cool example
Yeah.
And then realizing not to judge any book by its cover in your reality, or realizing how can I tweak my definitions to make every book as I prefer them to be.
Right. Which is what I did. I just started throwing out some dirty shit at this party, and people were either like, well, everybody was laughing. Nobody ran away. But we got into like such a fun discussion.
Yeah.
And then my friend that was there that knows me really well, she's like, you thought Karen was a prude? I mean, I'm the one kind of acting up in yoga. It's a pretty serious studio. And I'm the one like singing in music class and dancing. And I mean, nobody else does that. It's just not done except by me.
You know there's nothing serious going on here, Abraham quote.
But yeah, seriousness is of the ego. And I'm not, it's not a game I'm choosing to play.
Yeah, I love that. Me neither. Another reason we get along.
Yes.
Every time something like starts to get serious in life, I've practiced the idea, Abraham's quote, there's nothing serious going on here, so many times that I can remind myself, oh yeah, there's nothing serious going on here. Even when someone's like, listen, you got to listen up, this is serious. I go to that state where I superimpose another frame on top of it, and I'll be like, all right, I used to say something. I've been in the best state lately of just being completely able to allow without even have to say, like I used to think, and there's probably some degree of truth to it, of speaking my truth when it's in contrast to someone else. But I've been having such a beautiful, smooth ride lately, like feeling the tiniest or no trigger from other people who have perspectives that aren't aligned with mine, and not needing to say anything and be like, that is a truth you have right there, rock on with your truth, and then superimposing my preferred truth frame over the top of it and just continuing in that focus and finding just so much peace. There is always peace and joy available to us when we choose the frame rather than letting the frame choose us. It's everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so juicy.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun too. And that allowing, people feel seen too, whether you agree with them or not. They feel seen.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be up against it. They're not going to be in that resistance energy. What do you call it? Like defensive.
Defensive,
That's what
yes.
the word is.
Yes.
But for me, where I have trouble is when people are like, this is serious. I have a lot of trouble not laughing. And I do my best sometimes, not always. Sometimes I laugh and then they either laugh or get mad.
And that's their choice.
That's their choice. They're
Yeah.
always free.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I do too. I can't hold it back. If I'm in like a great state and someone's like, this is serious, like this spill of water is serious. And you're like, yeah, who spilled the water?
Yes. And well, anything we make important or serious, the subconscious mind reads as potentially fatal if it's not addressed. So we lose access to our creativity and to our intelligence and to our brilliance. We lose access to most of our resources. And they, go to the primitive mind that makes our jaw strong so we can bite somebody really hard, or our limbs strong so we can run fast. I'd rather be smart and creative and joyful.
Yeah, you know what I'm seeing connecting back with our starting point of possibility? Seriousness is basically a shutting down of possibility, because if you know I can regrow organs, I know I can regrow a limb, I know I have access to infinite money, then this car that got totaled cost me $100,000. Well, I am money itself. I have access to unlimited money. It can't be serious because who cares? Like, I can just buy another one. Or like, oh, I injured my shoulder. I can regrow a new shoulder. There's nothing serious about it. Like, that's literally what seriousness is. It's deciding, nope, it's not possible to pass that point. Or I use possible. This possibility is shut down. So we have to lean into our limitation. And then you get the emotional feedback, which is telling you you're out of alignment, and you lose your creativity. You go back into the limited animal self that's afraid and scared and huddled and vulnerable. It's a game, in every second, which way you gonna go? The limited human dying challenged self, or the infinite God unlimited self?
And Bashar said, and something I heard recently, if you really, really know on a deep level that every single thing is happening for you, what do you care what happens? Who cares? It's all for you. And just like a kid, you have no idea what the meaning of each thing is going to be, you're like, okay, let's see what happens. Like, and if you could learn to play with that and just be in that curiosity and playful energy, like, I don't know how this is happening for me, which is what I said, like the moment I got pulled over, I'm like, I don't know how this is happening for me, but I know it is.
Yes.
And I still don't know yet.
Yes.
But I'm just going with it. Like, you know, maybe I'm going to meet somebody really super hot at court.
Yes.
Because I get to go to court.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
I love that.
Maybe I meet my first $1 million client. Like, what do I know?
Yes. And that ties perfectly in with Dr. Joe, which I love. The unknown. Trust the unknown. Focus on the unknown. That's what we're all after. The novel experience of possibility. And the ultimate would be not knowing how or when or why, all the circumstances of how those great things come. I love that Bashar clip. It's one of my favorites. I can hear him saying it in my head. He's normally like emotional and forceful in his delivery, but with that specific episode where he's like, when you trust that everything is benefiting you, he goes, what do you care? And like the way he says, what do you care? If you guys can find this on YouTube, is like so, it like gives me goosebumps because it's so full of power. And he's like, that's power. When you don't care what happens because you know everything's benefiting you. And it like feels so good.
Yeah.
What do you care?
Yes. And what Dr. Joe says is the unknown has never let me down.
Yes. And Bashar's most spiritual phrase ever, 2 words, so what? I love that. That's the most spiritual phrase in all of creation. So what? I got pulled over. So what? I lost $1 million. So what? Like, what's done is done. Where am I focused on going towards right now?
Yeah, and how is it happening for me?
Yeah.
So what? It's like, you know, what he was talking about, the limits that we put on things, like what we make it mean is the limiting factors for us.
Yes.
What if we make it mean, oh my gosh, what's coming? What is this for? What could this
Yeah.
mean? What could this open up for me?
To tie in possibility too, I'm seeing the unknown is actually unlimited possibility. You're saying like, I am not limiting the outcome of this with any known possibility. I'm simply like surrendering to all possibilities. I'm hot
You're
on this
not.
possibility theme.
You're not. Oh, I had to bring it back.
Oh
Previous
shit,
episodes.
Karen! Mastery again in every episode. I bow at least once
At
to
least
Karen
you
and the
said,
mastery.
at least you clarified what
Yes.
it is. So if you haven't watched any of our previous episodes or listened, anytime we say a negative word like not, the universe and the subconscious mind do not hear the negative. Do not. They only hear the positive.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we get to watch what we say.
I've been playing with this with friends. I had a great example where I was hanging out with someone and they're like, what do you want for dinner? And I was like, pizza. And they're like, no, I don't want pizza. And all of a sudden I heard you being like, not actually,
pizza.
what's the word after? So then for like 15 minutes after, I was like, we're definitely not having pizza. The last thing I want to eat for dinner is pizza. Pizza's terrible. What do you want other than pizza? And I kept doing it. Would you guess? 30 minutes later, we're at a place that has pizza.
And it's a way, you can use it intentionally like that.
Yes.
Which I think I mentioned. Mm-hmm. I do it in hypnosis sometimes because the subconscious mind doesn't hear the knots, but the conscious mind is like, well, at least she's not trying to control me, which is exactly how you get it in there.
It becomes like fun. It was literally fun and playful because I had nothing to lose and I was like, let's fuck around with putting not in front of it because then I'm agreeing with the other person. Yeah, we definitely don't want pizza. But then I kept hitting on pizza.
So you're proof that I was right?
Yeah,
oh my
right
gosh,
on.
I love being right.
Yes.
Oh, that juices me.
Yeah, feels good.
Well, it wasn't really me, it's really science, but
Science.
But I shared the science, which made me the deliverer of rightness.
Yes. The deliverer of possibility.
That too. Oh, juicy. Feeling
Juicy.
good?
Yeah, feeling great. You?
I love this.
Me
I
too.
love the possibility of play and creating whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever we can imagine.
I'm excited.
It's already destined for us. And I believe we fully have all the resources to bring it into fruition.
Absolutely. It could be no other way. I'm juiced for the future. There's so many visions of things I have, and it must be capable. And it's probably why a lot of Eastern Proverbs people are like, heaven on earth is here now, because fucking everything's here now. Hell on earth is here now too. It's just whatever you choose.
Yeah.
But that means heaven on earth is a possibility, and that's where I'm going, or paradoxically, that's where I am right now.
You are there.
Especially
right
with
now
Karen.
if you choose it.
Yes.
Aw, John. Our end frame.
Yes, this is our end frame. Sweet Karen.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Karen.
And thank you everybody for watching and listening to Right
Bucking.
Now.
Peace.